Afternoon. Apparently I don't rate an intro, so I'll intro myself. My name is Stephen Rombaum. I am an investigator and the owner of Pelorium Investigations. The presentation that I'm about to give is, as you can see, Privacy is Dead, Get Over It. This is a dramatically truncated, less instruction on how to conduct database investigation and more to give an overview on what's out there and how it's being used. The reason that this is being done is privacy, of course, is now a massive issue. The HP situation right now, before that ChoicePoint, before that Sysant, LexisNexis, the loss of a total of 97 million records, one out of every 2 Americans. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to give you enough information so that when you think about this issue, you can make informed decisions. By the way, I'm getting a signal here. I'm being reminded that I'm supposed to tell you all that this talk is going to run into the lunch hour. If you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. We've packed this so tightly, as you'll see. I'm going to be going through this like a speed freak. That at approximately 2 o'clock, which is the lunch break, that's when we're going to hit Q&A. So for those of you who do want to stay for Q&A, an extra half an hour here, you'll still have a half hour for lunch. If you have longer lunch plans or you're going somewhere that requires okay. Can you hear me in the back? Good. Thought you could hear me before. If you want to stay for the Q&A, you're welcome to. If not, have a good lunch. What we've done for this particular presentation, in fact specifically for the TourCon presentation, is we have a victim. We have taken an individual by the name of Rick Dakin, who's a fairly well-known author. He wrote Geek Mafia and approximately 15 other books. When he comes up here, you should know he is much smarter than he looks. Sorry, Rick. No, he's a very sharp guy, in fact. Rick volunteered, actually in connection with the project that we're doing together, to be the privacy victim. And so we investigated Rick. Now, let me just tell you what we're not going to be covering today, because it would require the full 8 hours. We're not going to cover NCIC. We're not going to cover TEX. We're not going to cover NLETS. We're not going to cover the whole FinCEN amalgamation data, which, by the way, just so you know, that is the compilation of every financial transaction, every bank account, et cetera, that exists for every single American. Treasury Department database. As I said, we want to talk to you about what's out there. We're not going to tell you what to think, but hopefully we'll tell you what to think about. Here's what's changed, and here's why privacy is an issue today. Data was always compiled on every American. There were always marketing lists and junk mail and telephone number databases and credit cards and so on and so forth. What's changed is computing. Computing power, storage costs dropping extraordinarily, and more than that, the ease of creating data that allow everything to be cross-referenced, everything to be compiled. Used to be that if you wanted to check somebody's driver's license, you would have to go here. Their phone record, you'd have to go here. Their criminal record, you'd have to go here. Public records like property, marriage, death, divorce, you'd have to go down to the courthouse. Now it's all in one place for easy access and potentially easy invasion of your privacy. Even old records that were never digital are now being turned into digital format. OCR is the investigator's best friend. Every old deed record, marriage records, everything you can think of is being scanned in by the millions. Just as one example, just for grins, British Telephone scanned in 100 years of their old telephone books. There's no reason for them to do that. They put it up there as a courtesy to genealogists because it's just so darn easy to do. They ripped the covers off their phone books, they fed them into a sheet feeder, and poof, by the end of the week, 100 years of white pages are up on the BT website. Data is worth money. If you've got old data in non-digital format, it pays to suck it into your machine, sell it as a database. It's now easier, it's cheaper, and you make money by doing it. So as you can imagine, everything is now in databases. I want to just give you a quick overview of what we're going to be demonstrating. Here's how a typical investigator builds a bio profile. This is how it was done, a biography profile. Here's how it was done for Rick. Rick called me up and he said, I'd like to volunteer as your victim. All that I had was his name and number and an email address. Starting with the telephone number. If I use the thing over here, y'all can still hear me? That was a no. Okay. Well, we're going to have to modify things a wee little bit then. Starting with a telephone number, as you all know, you can get a name and address instantly. And by the way, whether it's a published or a non-published telephone number, you easily get a date of birth and a social security number. You can run a credit header, you can run a credit report, you can go into something like Skip Trace America. You can instantly get what's known as the key identifiers, which are date of birth and social security number. From there, you trace the social security number, you get past addresses, and you get family members, including, of course, the Holy Grail, which is the mother's maiden name. From there, employment, businesses, corporations, public records like property, marriage, divorce, voter reg, which some people don't know is public record, but your voter registration is, in fact, available for examination by anyone. Criminal records, court filings, public filings, UCCs, tax filings, permits, licenses, including gun permits, your driver's license, motor vehicle, your accident history, credit report, phone bills, credit card bills. Now, by the way, this list is not legally obtainable, but is routinely obtained, as people have learned. Your 800 number call history, who you've called into, your purchasing history, tax donations, and actually, if I had a bigger page, I could go on for about 20 minutes. The basic information that can be obtained on an individual and that gives you an immediate snapshot of that individual can be obtained in less than 5 minutes. One of the things, now, I realize that this is a sophisticated convention, and you all know what MySpace is, and it's no great shock to anyone that MySpace is an outrageous source of data. The reason that I'm putting it up here is it is an example of how people are contributing, self-contributing to the data available on them. If you go on MySpace, you're going to have a person's date of birth, everywhere they went to school, who their friends are, what their hobbies are, the most intimate details about a person that they wouldn't share with their wife, they wouldn't share with their kids, they wouldn't share with their parents, but they share it with a universe of strangers. Some of this, I think we can probably speed through this. You all are pretty familiar with MySpace. But some of the stuff that's up there is outrageous. Here's a post about a woman talking about being molested by her dad, being involved in robberies, not being caught for the robberies, then meeting a husband who was a tough guy because he was a fellow robber and he could control her and make her feel safe. That's her profile. Here you have Ganja Girl. Now, besides getting her name, her date of birth, where she went to school, where she works, the pizza factory, I mean, she puts up for the whole world to read that her sexual orientation is bisexual and she's a drug user. Now, this is absolutely typical. It took me, I don't know, 60 seconds of doing the browse command on MySpace to find this. Some of these are really ridiculous. This is because I'm involved in law enforcement, the next two are pretty funny to me. Here's a guy whose motto is go fucking kill yourself. He talks about doing drugs and all sorts of violent activities, and he says, my goal is to be a police officer when I'm 21. He may very well get fast-tracked to hiring, depending on the department. Here's another fella, and this one I just love. It says, you currently smell like gunpowder. He gives his real name, he gives his real date of birth, and but poses, as you might notice, pointing a shotgun at the camera, and he is a corrections officer. This is typical, and there are dozens of sites like this, and people don't even realize what the heck they're putting up there. Now let me tell you a secret. These pages are spidered by everybody worth a damn, and the data collected. Just because it's in MySpace doesn't mean that people can take their page down, and I'm not talking about cached pages. I want to tell you that there are agencies, both private agencies and public agencies, sucking every bit of data off of MySpace. And by the way, Friendster and all of those. This is all going into databases. And there's actually a fantastic article coming out in LA Weekly, which we assisted with in about 4 weeks, which is going to talk about Google's connection with the U.S. government, how they give the U.S. government different types of access to their data than they give to you and me. Amazon. You all use Amazon, or you all use some equivalent of Amazon. What's so insidious about the use of Amazon as an example, not as the sole example, but as just one of many, what's so insidious about using a service like Amazon is how all the little digital footprints that you leave build up a profile of you. What you like to read, what your interests are, where you are at any given moment when you log in, your likes, your dislikes, your habits. It's possible to extrapolate. Think about what you've done on Amazon and even what your searches have been once you've logged in. Do you have a physical problem? Chances are you search for a book about that particular illness. Are you gay? Are you a certain ethnicity? Are you a certain religion? All of that can easily be determined just from what you're interested in reading and what you searched on Amazon. And believe me, there are lots and lots of people, including me, who do that. Without leaving my house, I can determine if you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, if you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, if you are likely gay or likely not, if you're a liberal, if you're a conservative, not just from Amazon. I mean, we'll continue. eBay, PayPal, and Skype are now one big company. Now, that's certainly wonderful for convenience and for interoperability and things like that. It's also wonderful for finding out everyone you talk to, everything you pay for, everything you buy, everything you're interested in. In short, all the intimate details about your personal life, including who you talk to on the phone. Which, by the way, I could find out before, but now it's easier. Google. I'm not one of these people who believe Google has a fleet of black helicopters, but they're probably building them somewhere. They're really, really close to being Skynet, if you guys are familiar with that movie. Google intelligently, incredibly intelligently, understands something that most of America does not understand yet. Owning information in your possession and being able to do whatever you want with it without anybody telling you or stopping you, and being able to cross-reference that with what you might think is unrelated information, but really isn't. Having access to every type of information about an individual is priceless. It is the new currency. Information really is power now in a way that it never was up until approximately 10 years ago. And let's talk about what Google either does or is in the process of doing. Every website, including what people say, oh, they'll never find it, it's the deep web. Ridiculous. Blogs, news groups. If you are a member of a news group, not only do Not only is it possible to determine what your interests are, but what you talk about on the news group. Media, Gmail. If you look at the Gmail account, they beg you not to delete your mail. Don't delete your mail. You have unlimited storage space. It actually says that on the Gmail site. Why do you think that is? Because, yes, please waste storage space on our computer? No, please leave everything up there so that we can index it and know what your likes and dislikes are, what your issues are, who you talk to. Think about what's in your email. Google Chat, ditto. They are in the process of scanning in every book. Even if the publisher and the writer says no, they say, tough, sue us. And by the way, we have $1 billion legal defense fund. People have told them, don't scan my book, and Google has said tough. Multiple times. You could probably Google it and find out. Google News, Maps. Mapping, as we'll go into in a second, is the next big issue. Not only are people able to tell today where you physically are at most moments of your life, but what is right there next to you. And we're going to go into that. Google Music, what your likes are. Google Finance. Google Checkout. Google is putting together what is going to be a very, very effective and probably very widely used competitor to PayPal. And you're going to have a completely vertically integrated experience on Google. You search Samsung Television. It gives you all the Samsung television sites. I assure you the ones that use Google Checkout will be listed first. You go there and you use their own system to purchase it. And by the way, if you're emailing your friends with Gmail, asking about what's the best television, you will get targeted ads for these items. Google Telecom, no kidding. They are putting together what until a minute ago I would have called VoIP, but apparently it's VoIP. Google Tools on your own hard drive, Google Tools on your website, it helps them suck it all in. Now, how does Google know who you are? How does Google connect all that activity, all that incredibly personal activity to you personally? Well, most people now log in with a Google account. There's a Gmail account. You have a static IP number, forget about it, they own you. Google on a cell phone, they know who owns the cell phone. The best way for Google to find out who you is, everybody does what I call ego searching. Everybody Googles their own name, practically every damn day. Everybody Googles their own telephone number, their own email address. People Google, approximately a third of the people who use Google their own social security number. I have no idea why, but that's an actual fact. Google knows who you are. And these are just examples. And here's Google saying, search, don't sort, don't throw anything away. Over 2,446 terabytes of data and still grabbing it. Google is so into our minds now, into your minds, not mine. I take a lot of steps to avoid having my Google search history indexed, but Google is now being used for predictive profiling of markets. Are people going to buy more Volkswagens? Do people like the new light beer? That sort of thing. And they're accurate within about 90%. It's frightening. Now, this is no general relation to the topic, but I put it up there because I always like to put hypocrisy up on a screen. CNET went to interview the CEO of Google, and the CNET reporter walked in with the guy's Google printout and said, yeah, man, I Googled you. Look at what I found. The guy threw him out of the office and banned CNET from interviewing anybody at Google for a year. So don't Google. Everybody talks about Google because of their extraordinary PR. Nobody talks about Yahoo. Yahoo's bigger, better, faster, has more. Yahoo started with Yahoo groups back from the beginning of time. Yahoo does the same thing, And because they are so under the radar, they resell it for marketing purposes. It's easier to get the Yahoo stuff, and there's more of it. And Yahoo, God bless them, unlike where you have to spend an entire evening and order pizza to find Google's privacy policy, Yahoo puts it right up front. Once you register with us, we know who you are, it's our info, tough. Now, it's not going to be just if you go into a search engine and click out from the search engine search. Within the next year or two, and it's all of the major ISPs now like AOL, Yahoo, what have you, Earthlink, actually have a list of the ones that are doing it now, and it already covers more than half of the computing experience, the logon experience, and the pipes of America. But it's going to be nationwide. ISPs are going to not only keep your search history and your activity online because it will make them money. Within a year or two, they're going to be legally mandated to save it for 3 years in case they discover you're an Al-Qaeda member and they want to know who you've been talking to. As an investigator, one of the main things I want to find out about somebody is who they know, who they hang out with, who they talk to. Thank you very much, all of you that use the friendship sites and the relational sites, for putting it up there for me so I can just grab it. Now, by the way, if you don't use one of these sites, again, it's still known who you email, who you Google, because people Google their friends right after they Google themselves. There are sites like Monster.com, Resume.com. There are, on any given day, 30 million old and let's say archived or used resumes on the net. Now, I may not be able to find easily a history of a 16-year-old kid, but pretty much anyone who's been out there in the workplace and who's actively looking for jobs is now also using internet resume sites. And think about what's on your resume. Everything. Everything. Your name, your home address, your phone number, your entire educational history, your entire work history. Now, never mind, I know you'll resumes, but don't worry, I'll work my way through it and find out what's right. Everywhere you've ever worked is the main thing. I mean, here's a, I don't know, can you guys read that? I mean, here's a guy, you know, obviously we've masked some of it, and we used their sample resume also so we could cut and paste, but here's a guy, John Doe, home address, email address, you know, what sort of job he's looking for, his work history, his education history, his skills. Well, most people do put in a salary wage, believe me. You know, now here's somebody offering, you know, asking for an ethical hacker. By the way, you guys may want, this is a real ad. They're actually looking for an ethical hacker. This is, oh, Fidelity. Yeah, the fun guys. They're looking for an ethical hacker. They'd probably take a not so ethical hacker. ZabaSearch. Everyone's heard about it. ZabaSearch is a deadly, deadly, deadly service. Why? Because this is information that's been gathered through TU and TransUnion and a couple of the credit bureaus. Yes, this is all old stuff. Yes, they take out your identifiers like your social security number. But the fact of the matter is there's 20 years of personal credit bureau data up for everybody on ZabaSearch. Yes, without the financials, so it's perfectly legal, but believe me, this is an unintended use of the data. And by the way, we're going to go into something that I call Rambam's law later, which is no matter the purpose that the data is gathered and compiled for, it will be used for something else. Absolutely. ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo exists to provide employment data and employment history in conjunction with Monster. But if you use ZoomInfo, what it does is it pulls up your entire work history. Thank you very much. There's an endless list, The key thing that you need to realize about these, most of these are not services that compile information on you. You compile it yourself and you submit it to them. You give them your likes, your dislikes, your age, your habits, your friends, your family, all of that. Now, there are also sites that compile data based on their own interests, their own angry, screaming interests. And I call these rage sites. And these are the, there's hundreds of them, but these two made me laugh the hardest. One is called Don't Date Him Girl, and the other is called Who's a Rat? Who's a Rat? Probably is a Who's Your Daddy. Okay, here's this one. This boy will use you like no other. He smokes weed all day, every day. And if he doesn't have it, he will freak out. He is so broke. This is alleged cheetah Aaron Carter III. This is pretty damn typical. Here you have a guy who said he loved me, and then he ended up with another boy. Uh-oh. By the way, if you meet Jonathan Rainwater, watch your back. Literally. Then there's the Who's a Rat site, which God love this guy. He's in Australia. He knew he couldn't post it in America. This is a massive, massive list of federal informants and undercover agents and whatever. It is with photos and everything. Now it's posted in Australia, and I'm sure, you know, excuse me? Okay. Heckle later. Here's an example of a Who's a Rat profile. Thomas Evans, male, 32, Massachusetts, all the places he's ever lived, what his activity was, what agencies he reported to, his picture, thank you very much. You know, more informant profiles. Now this, that so far up until this point, every single thing that I've discussed, you have a reasonable shot at getting access to. Let's talk about some other stuff that is available to the general public if they're in the corporate world, but not necessarily the general public. The incredibly aptly named MIB, the Medical Information Bureau. Every insurance claim, every insurance test, every AIDS test. You got life insurance, the test that was given to you is going to be in there, your claim history, who your beneficiary is. If you have the sort of policy where you have an added items rider on your policy and you list the Rembrandt hanging in your bathroom, that's in there, that sort of thing. ID scans. There's a company called ID Scan that puts this out and helps maintain the database. 17 times a year, people go to a bar. The guy says, give me your ID. And before you have a chance to say anything, he slides it, sucks it right into a machine. Well, what that does is that takes everything that's encoded on your driver's license. Thanks to ID Scan, it gets unencoded, and it goes into a massive database. So, if you spend a lot of time drinking at places where they scan your driver's license, I will know about it. And by the way, this puts all your updated information into databases. You know, you update your driver's license and somebody wants it for their database, they can buy it from here without having to go to the trouble of going to the state and spending $50,000 for the DL database. Domino's Pizza, I love talking about this. All kidding aside, this is one of the best investigative databases in America. If you call Domino's, and by the way, Papa John's also, those are the two. If you call Domino's or Papa John's, you're calling on an 800 number. They've got your number, they've got your name, they've got your address, they've got it as of 1 second ago. And you really live there because they're delivering the pizza. You can't give a post office box to Domino's. Well, let me tell you something. I know of at least 6 law enforcement agencies that buy the Domino's data and use it to track fugitives. You know, people will put their phone number under a phony name, they'll work off the books with a cash job, but by God, they're going to buy pizza. So, there you go. Every point of purchase, if you have any digital component to that purchase, Are you using a frequent shopper card at Piggly Wiggly, which doesn't exist anymore, but I like the name of the place? Are you buying grow lights with your credit? Well, hey, there's lots and lots of stupid people out there. Otherwise, I'd be out of work. Are you buying scuba gear? Well, that means you're involved in an unhealthy lifestyle and your insurance premiums just went up. People check that. Here's a perfect example of Rambam's law of unintended data use. Stop and Shop tested a program which they obnoxiously named SmartMouth that allowed them to comment on shoppers' purchases, and they would send, the shoppers found out about it because they thought they were being nice, and they were sending shoppers letter like, you're buying too much fatty stuff. You're buying too much salty stuff. They were in negotiations with 3 Massachusetts area HMOs to sell this stuff to the HMOs for risk rating before there was such an uproar that they had to stop the program. Just an example. Now let's talk about something that nobody talks about. I've got all this data on you, but I want to know where you are at any given moment. Now, there's all sorts of obvious things like frequent flyer cards, frequent hotel guest cards. If you want to know where I am, I'm on the road about 250 days a year. Believe me, you can find me every single one of those 250 days because I want that upgrade to the concierge level, so I give them my platinum frequent hotel guest card. I want to get upgraded to first, so I use a frequent flyer card. I want free tickets every once in a while. I use an affiliated credit card. Everybody does. There's no escape from it without screwing yourself. So if you want to get maximum advantage, you've got to give up a little privacy. But let's talk about things nobody thinks about. Microsoft now has this, it's incredible who names these things. It's like Big Brother, but Windows Genuine Advantage notifications. All new versions of Windows phone home to the mothership. They notify Microsoft what's on your system, where you're at, and whether or not you're using what they consider to be pirated programs. And people, get shut down by this mistakenly. It started to happen. Apple. I'm a Mac guy. I love Mac. I think there's a certain, philosophy to being a Mac guy. But Mac is now more and more and more in the corporate world. And Mac puts trackers on your machines. Everything from if you use desktop, which is permanently connected, permanently on the internet, Apple Store, iTunes Mini Store, there's a little icon in the corner that if you don't click it off, the default is not off. The default is on. It will phone home to the mothership. Windows Media Player, they have something that they pretty honestly called a super cookie. Not only does it say what you listen to, but it tells them where you are. By where you are, I mean your IP address. And of course, any time that you connect to a server, to an email system, whatever, and you have to authenticate your identity, meaning log in, people know where you are. Now there's more trackers. That's the obvious stuff. That's stuff you all probably know about. Now let's talk about things like OnStar. OnStar reports where you are at every moment. Let me tell you, I have gotten subpoenas for people's OnStar activity. Governmental agencies have gotten subpoenas for your OnStar activity. Governmental agencies have also tapped cars by having the speaker in OnStar turned on. So OnStar, bad. There's EasyPass, there's iPass, there's SunPass. Now they're not only being used when you go through the toll, but there are detectors along the side of highways to tell if you're speeding. And believe me, within a few years you're going to get speeding, and there's going to be no cop. That little aluminum bag that it comes in, if you haven't taken the aluminum and made a hat out of it, use it for the EasyPass. Don't let it send out a signal as you're driving. MetroCard. Listen, I'm a New Yorker. Every time I want to use public transportation, I have to swipe a MetroCard. If they know my MetroCard, they know everywhere I've been. And it's getting harder and harder and harder not to buy a MetroCard with a credit card. So people see your MetroCard purchase. They see the code number of the MetroCard that was delivered to you by the machine. They know everywhere you've taken the subway. Passenger lists. car chips. Digital license plates readers are the wave of the future for every law enforcement agency. It costs $20,000, that's it, based off of a Dell laptop, hopefully an exploding Dell laptop, but based off of a Dell laptop and a decent resolution camera, it's very, very easy to set up a surveillance point and capture every single license plate that goes through. It's simple OCR. That's it. It's simple OCR. And you will see, by the way, less and less vanity plates over the next 5 years because all these scripts and different formats are making it hard to track where you are with these license plate readers. Now, by the way, LAPD is using them in, about 30 cars already to recover stolen vehicles and catch stolen cars. Right now, you see a license plate, you've got to manually input it, and if it comes up stolen, you grab the guy. But with this, you can drive down the street and the thing will say, hey, that's a stolen car. Which is the originally intended use. But believe me, again, Rambam's law, that's not what it's going to be used for. If you're not using an easy pass, people are still going to know every damn road you drive down and where you've been. Guaranteed. Cell phone activity. Listen, you guys are the uber geeks. I'm not going to talk to you about GPS or tower triangulation or anything like that. I'm just going to say, if you've got a cell phone and it's on, I know where you are every moment of the day. And you all have a cell phone and you all have them turned on. So I know where you are at every moment of the day. Wi-Fi activity. You log in from a node. Well, until they have Wi-Fi that lets you from 10 miles away, I'm going to know where you are within 100 feet. Cell phone pinging. It's possible to ping a cell phone and get a location. There are services that do it. And for example, Teen Arrival Live, AT&T here now has Find Friends, Mobile Angel, Tracer Mobile, which is the most honestly named one. For businesses, there's a service called Tello, which constantly pings your cell phone, tells if you're using it, if you're reachable. Navtech is one of the there's two major mapping companies in America, pretty much in the world, but two major in America. Navtech is one of them. Navtech sends out teams of little drones and also does a lot of brilliant AI stuff to constantly update what is at every location. What's at 123 Main Street? Joe's Bar. What's at 125 Main Street? Private house. These are the people living in it, and so on and so forth. Navtech sells databases to every company that wants to sync it with your cell phone. Bob Jones is walking down the street. Now, his GPS activity shows that he spent an hour and 40 minutes at 123 Main Street. What's there? Oh, Joe's Bar. Okay. He spent an hour and 45 minutes drinking. Then he went down the block and he went into a mini, which is all divorce lawyers. I wonder what that means, and so on and so forth. This is, it's kind of, can you guys read that? Okay, well, it has, for example, parking garage C, 13 spaces available. This is what will be sent to your mobile. These are examples of the messages that can be delivered. Traffic backup. Shea Paul has 3 tables available. Box seats available, and so on and so forth. It cross-references where you are with everything that's in the area for marketing purposes, ostensibly to send a little note to your cell phone. Extremely targeted marketing. I know if they know you like Chinese food and you're passing a Chinese restaurant that's not full up, it'll send you a note. Hey, look to your right, there's 3 seats available. And they really are at that level already. Now, that's what it's for. Smart people figure out what I could use it for. Well, he spent an hour and 45 minutes in a bar. Then he got in a cab. We can tell by the speed of the movement of the phone. Then he spent about an hour at a strip bar. Then he went to a bank. I guess he put a lot of dollar bills in the G-string. Went to an ATM. And then he went to a divorce lawyer. And I can tell all of this without having to physically put you under surveillance. I have a little intrusive robot doing it. And by the way, in about 40 to 50 states, a GPS tracker on your car that I can just walk over and it's going to tell me through a dedicated website where that car is at every moment. 40 out of 50 states, it's still legal. Be afraid. Be very afraid. MapQuest not only is getting deeply into, and by the way, they buy all this stuff from Navtech. Not only is MapQuest busy getting into this whole where are the users at any given moment, but by the way, they want you to invade your privacy. And it's called MapQuest Find Me. Now, trust me, they're finding you anyway. But if you pay them $3 or $5, or for the corporate thing, I think it's $100 for 20 users or some crap like that. After they find you, they'll tell you what's around you. Basically, you're paying them to tell you where you are. Look at a street sign. TV, TiVo, and cable. Let me tell you something. Everything that you do with cable, with TiVo, with the new digital TVs with the external connection to the big tube antenna and all of that is sent to an outside party. I know what you watch. I know what you're interested in. I know if you rewound 5 times that Janet Jackson nipple shot and played it over and over. I know if you watch the Britney Spears commercial 18 times, you dirty old man, for the Super Bowl and that sort of thing. But you also need to know that we have so much information on how much TV you watch a day, when your butt is actually stuck in front of that TV because you're working the remote, what your interests are, so on and so forth. These people are also, and it's wonderful to know, for your convenience, setting up telephone companies so they'll also know everybody you talk to. They're setting up pipes in your house. You can get a cable modem, of course, so they know everything you connect to. And by the way, since it's a cable connection in your house, there's no anonymity. That's your connection. You're logging in. They know every website you look at, every email you send, every interest you have. And most cable companies now offer these 3 combined services: the telephone, the broadband pipe for you with a cable modem, and their traditional service, which is TV. So think about it. They'll know everybody you talk to on the phone, everybody you email, all your likes, all your dislikes, all your online purchases, where you're traveling to, what you're doing, where you are at any given moment. Nice, huh? And by the way, since private records, you can't do a damn thing about it. Money. And this is something I go into at great length with investigative groups and law enforcement groups, but let me tell you, there is no transaction that you can be involved in except cash that is not indexed and indexed forever. Now, the credit card purchases are indexed for really obvious reasons. And some good ones. They have to bill you. They have to make sure there's no fraud. But they also develop marketing profiles, which they make billions and billions of dollars selling. And they keep a profile of you, what your likes are, what your dislikes are, everywhere you travel, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that you pay for with your credit card is available. ATM cards aren't ATM cards anymore. They're debit cards. Same problem. Contactless credit devices. PayPal, Pay It Later, Western Union, all give their data directly. Here you go to the U.S. government. In fact, PayPal turned over so much stuff to the U.S. government that the U.S. government actually went back to them 3 weeks ago and made a request and said, do me a favor, we're looking really right now for tax cheats. All this, whatever. Can you please segregate out the data that fits these parameters? It's a guy living in America, but the PayPal money is coming out of a bank account overseas. And PayPal gave them 170,000 names. 170,000 Americans with offshore bank accounts that are now going to have somebody knocking at their door, probably with a big forklift to take away their furniture. First Data. First Data, how many people here have actually heard of First Data? Just out of curiosity. Man, you guys are slick. Okay, that's about 5 times the response I normally get. First Data processes every Visa and MasterCard. Every single one. One-stop shopping for getting your credit card history. And by the way, there are more and more places that now identify you with your fingerprint, not just if you're a little kid in school and you're not supposed to have, something with nuts because you're allergic, and that way the lunch lady will know who you are, but there are hundreds of thousands of these fingerprint credit card devices. Getting close to the end, so I'm going to have to really speed through this. I can't believe it. We didn't even get to Rick yet. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this very, very fast. Target marketing. How many of you guys will be able to stay for about a half hour longer? Okay, outstanding. Okay. In that case, let me do this really quickly, but not omit anything. InfoUSA is a company that most of you have never heard of unless you're in the business world. InfoUSA puts out the phone discs. Next cell phone that rings, I own. InfoUSA also maintains trillions, literally trillions of marketing and sales records, and they put out massive, massive, massive marketing lists. This is the InfoUSA catalog. This is all their marketing lists. Forestry, coal mining, construction, metal engineers, all types of purchasers, what you're interested in. Do you routinely travel? That sort of thing. They have more information on individuals, them and a company called Axiom, than the U.S. government does. And it's everything you've ever done in your life sucked into one place to develop an all-in-one-place profile of who you are for not just targeted marketing, but intensely targeted marketing. Every subscription, every toll-free call, every product survey, every registration, every credit card purchase, every type of credit card, every affinity card purchase, your likes, your dislikes, your religion, your politics, everything. Think about it. Think about what you do that indicates who you are. Now here's two actual profiles. Profile number one subscribes to Soldier of Fortune, gets the American Rifleman, which means he's an NRA member, reads the Washington Times, purchased The Force of Reason on Amazon. I don't know why that says R. It should say is a registered Republican, and he's listed in the Focus USA database's Christian donors list. Now, can you extrapolate what sort of person this guy is? He is a right-wing conservative Christian gun owner, votes Republican. Not for certain, but 99% for certain. Next guy subscribes to the Village Voice, High Times. This is a real profile. Cat Fancier magazine. Purchased Chomsky's latest horror. His voter registration has him registered for the Green Party primary. He gave contributions, which by the way are public record, to the UJA, the Gay Men's Health Crisis, and American Friends of Peace Now. Let me tell you what this guy is. He is a Jewish guy. He's left-wing. He's 99% gay, not because of the Gay Men's Health Crisis, but because of the cat. Sorry, I'm sorry. But what he is, all kidding aside, is a gay, left-wing Jewish guy. And in fact, that's who he is. And you can tell that without leaving your house. You don't have to knock on neighbors' doors anymore. These are real, honest-to-God, Scouts Honor profiles. Here's examples of some obnoxious lists, just from one outfit. Caught in a pickle. These are people who owe money. Credit Amigos. These are Hispanic people who owe a lot of money on their credit cards. I mean, pretty freaking obnoxious name, but you have domain registration at home addresses. Now, I've got to tell you, I bought that list, and it's part of my online service. My company, by the way, owns one of the largest privately held investigative support services in the country. I bought that, and it's part of a product that we now sell for work comp investigations. Oh, I'm back hurts, I can't work. Oh yeah, well you're running this website from home, pal. Claim denied. Rambam's law of unintended data use. Outdoorsman, Reach Me, Verbal Advantage. I don't know. I don't know. But questions in 2 minutes. Here's one that really freaks. Grab that guy's cell phone. Knock him down and grab his cell phone. Here you have one, astrology success. This is like the bonehead marketing list. These are people who responded to a direct mail solicitation offering angelic intervention. I will have the angel Gabriel pray for you to get a raise. Oh, here you go. Here's 20 bucks. This is the moron list, but you can buy it. Somebody gay? Well, there's gay marketing. If you are a homosexual in zip code, I don't know, 90210, you are probably in a homosexual marketing list. Yes? My ride is here? I have, oh, well, can you let these guys in for the second part of my talk? This is a colleague of mine. Okay, come on in, grab a seat. Don't disturb me further. Comes over and he says, your ride is here. The chicken dances around the yellow moon. I don't know. Some code phrase. What you need to know about these three major Big Brother outfits. Oh, okay, he's closing the door. ChoicePoint, Axiom, Sison, and also InfoUSA, by the way, is that they make their data available to the government, and the government makes their data on you available to them. But here's what happens. You've all have heard about how the U.S. government, and I'm a registered Republican, by the way, but you got to draw the line somewhere. You've all heard about how the U.S. government outsources torture. It's a fact, they do. If they want electrodes attached to your nipples, they just send you to Pakistan, and Pakistan does it for them. And then they send you back to a little box with your signed confession, and hey, America doesn't torture anybody. Well, America outsources your privacy invasion also. Let me tell you how they do that. They give driver's license records, motor vehicle records, voter registration records, phone records, every kind of record you can imagine to these database compilers who already have all your purchases, all your activity, where you are at any given moment, your phone calls and everything. Massive profiles are compiled on every single person. Not black helicopter crap. It happens. I use it daily in my work, and I know that for every incredibly impressive profile I get, which you're going to see in about 3 minutes on Rick, for everything that I can get on an individual, the U.S. government can get exponentially more. And not only they can, but they do, and for no reason at all, because there's no restriction. This is private company records. So here's what the government does, just so you understand this. They give all your data to a company. It then becomes private business records, and they request it back. They don't need a subpoena if it's given consensually. And if you want to file a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request, what does the U.S. government have on me? Well, they may not have much, but ChoicePoint may have a full megabyte of digital data on you. And if you ask ChoicePoint for it, tough, it's private business records. So they outsource the invasion of your privacy, and they do just a truly pat on the back to whatever U.S. Attorney's Office guy thought of this. They do an incredible end run around the Freedom of Information Act. Not putting my own personal feelings into this, but it's a fact, and if I was going to tell you how to think, I'd probably tell you to be really pissed off. And ChoicePoint buys up everything from insurance companies to rap sheets, which has everybody's criminal record, to medical testing companies, to mortgage asset companies. I mean, there's endless lists. Just a little quick overview before we get to my victim. Here's stuff that's happening. Cameras everywhere. This is a small area of Manhattan. Believe me, if I took a small area of San Diego, it would be as bad or worse. First you have a few cameras, then you have more, then you have more. It's estimated that by 2018, you will not be able to walk down an urban street without being filmed once. In the UK, where they're camera crazy, every individual is filmed 14 times an hour. It'll be much, much, much more than that. And this is going to be coupled with facial recognition software, which, believe me, is getting better and better and better. It's really good. Okay, so you put on a Groucho Marx nose and glasses and a hat and turn your collar up when you walk down the street. No problem. They're now developing, in, by the way, the land of privacy invasion, England, they're developing gait recognition software, which really works. So now, in addition to the nose and glasses, you're going to have to limp on one leg and then turn the corner and limp on the other leg, and it still won't work. Yeah, this is, there now, by the way, there now exists a device where they can shoot your butt with an RFID chip, and people are putting, you know, consensually implanting chips. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I know Timothy McVeigh got drunk and tried to dig the chip out of his butt that they thought they planted there, and then went off and blew up a building. Trust me, there's no chips in you, but whatever. Now, last thing I want to cover is the scariest thing. I know this has all been, I hope, enlightening. Let me tell you that with the information that's out there, I can tell things about you, even if you haven't specifically contributed that information. Now, if you've gone on a marketing database, or you've logged on to the VW website and looked into the Super Beetle, or done a search on eBay for used Super Beetles, then I know you're interested in that car. But if you, this is honest to God true, if you own a cat and you eat chunky peanut butter, you are 75% more likely to buy a Volkswagen Beetle than somebody who doesn't meet those characteristics. Rambam's law, unintended data use. This is actually pretty brilliant data use, but it's also pretty scary because people can look into your head even if you haven't done the search. Karl Rove, you know, Merlin of the Republican Party, he discovered things like Republicans drink bourbon, which is true. I like Michter's bourbon. Republicans drink bourbon, and gin drinkers are overwhelmingly Democrats. By the way, watch this. How many of you here drink gin? No, that's a big, big fat lie. You guys aren't cooperating. Now, the average American has 9 friends, drinks milk from the cereal bowl. Why they need to know that, I couldn't guess. Eats 25 pounds of candy, has lost 12 teeth, probably because of the 25 pounds of candy. And he prefers smooth peanut butter over chunky. I mean, just ridiculous things. Volkswagen, I mean, they're Germans. They keep records. Volkswagen continues this on an outrageous scale. Now, here's, let me just, because I don't have it all up on, well, we don't have time for this, but for example, they know that VW owners are 81% more likely to chat online, 32% more likely to buy a power boat, 71% more likely to go to an action-adventure movie, so on and so forth. Now, by the way, I've got a whole list of it. It's called the Jetta Report. They know everything about you. Now let's just, and this is what we're going to close with before my victim. If you know things about someone, you can extrapolate out intelligently. You have an Air Force civilian employee who dumps all his stock in one airplane manufacturer and buys another after 5 years. Think he knows something about the next airplane purchase? People who check flights to Iran a couple of days before a bombing. You buy a book on fighting cancer. Either you or somebody you care about has been diagnosed with cancer. You rent a gay porno movie. Duh. Unless, you know, you heard your friend Bob was in it and you just want to make sure. You put an address into MapQuest. If you put an address into MapQuest, you're going to that address. You have an interest in that address. And then another database finds out that it's a strip club. Oh, okay. You fill a prescription for Xanax. Well, there's only one way you do that. You fill a prescription for Viagra. Well, I'm sorry for you. But here's my favorite one, and this is a real one. Again, this is all, I'm not smart enough to make this stuff up. It's all real stuff. You're on a plane 4 times in a year, and sitting next to you is a woman those 4 times who's not your wife. What do you think that means? It's not your secretary. It's not a business trip. Now let's have some fun. I was supposed to speak. It was unfortunately rather rudely interrupted. I was supposed to speak at the Hope Convention in New York. And the people laughing know what I'm talking about. I requested on the radio program, whatever the hell it's called. What's it called? Off the Hook. I requested a victim. And I got about 97 boobs. And one guy who's a real guy. It's like, wait a second, this can't be real. See, he sends me an email. He says, I'm Rick Dakin. I'm an author. I'm attending the convention. I'm willing to be your victim. And at the bottom of it is an email address and a phone number. It sounded too good to be true, so I did a quick investigation. And by the way, I mean, there's a search called Telegorilla. You plug in a phone number, whether it's pub, non-pub, gives you name, address, social security number, date of birth, related information. And I saw, what do you know? It's a real phone number. And I did some more and ran his cell phone and his property and all sorts of things that you can't fake, you know, on 5 minutes notice. He has a work history, he has a residence history, he has a phone, he has a cell phone, probably a real guy. So I gave him a call. And he agreed to do it. Now, we were going to do this about 4 years ago at another convention, and I did such an incredible investigation on the guy that I found out things that freaked him out. So the day before the convention, his lawyer called me and said, if you're planning to do this, we'll serve you the lawsuit right now. And I couldn't do it. So I went back to my lawyer, and I said, give me a waiver for this idiot to sign. He can't be, you know. So the guy wrote up a 2-page waiver, and I just want to read you one paragraph of it, because to this day, and Rick and I have become great friends, and we're actually doing a book together, but I can't believe he signed this. Just let me read this one paragraph. Pelorium may disseminate any information about me which it obtains or compiles to any person in any venue as it sees fit, even if the dissemination of that information could cause me harm, emotional distress, pain, injury, humiliation, or ridicule, or other personal or financial damage, and even if the information is disseminated is partially or completely false. I mean, Rick and I have become friends, so I actually checked the info with him. And by the way, the rest of it is even worse. And he signed it, and God bless him, like I asked him to, he even had it notarized. So here's what we did. Here's what we did. Let me tell you what we did and what we didn't do very quickly. This was a real quick investigation. We didn't do anything tricky. We didn't do any field work at all. We didn't do any garbology. By the way, if I investigate you, I'm grabbing your garbage, because the stuff you throw away, priceless. You know, it could be a good MasterCard connection. You know, we didn't pull his phone records. We didn't pull his credit card bills. We did do some marketing stuff, some checks, but nothing significantly illegal. Really. First thing we did, we ran him through Gorilla Trace. Gorilla Trace is a meta search that's primarily for investigators. You can plug in simultaneously a guy's name, address, telephone number, email address, place of business, and it runs it everywhere. I mean, it saves you about an hour and 45 minutes of snooping. Then we ran him through Diogenes. We ran him through a beta test site called which is Online Investigation Network. As you can see, it says, our data will make you squeal with delight. And we got a lot of information on him. And let me just tell you, when you investigate somebody, you start with a little bit and you end up with a lot. No matter what you start with, it's like pulling a thread, or what's called the inverted pyramid. You start with one thing, and everything that you get leads to more things and more things. And after you have 5 or 6 pieces of information, you can get everything. What you're looking for is the Holy Grail on somebody. If the Holy Grail, if you're breaking the law, is the mother's maiden name. But for legitimate investigators, it's name, legitimate residence address, date of birth, social security number, telephone number. Those 5 things, I own you. I can find out anything I want to know. Email helps, your IP, if you have a dedicated IP address. From his phone, we got his name, his address, his date of birth, his social security number. From there, we did an SSN trace, and we got his entire residence history. So far, everything I've done taken less than 5 minutes. Everywhere he's ever lived. And by the way, what I'm masking is his social security number and his date of birth, because it's none of your business. Not that you couldn't hire somebody and get it. Here's, from another credit bureau, his address history. Here's another credit bureau, his address history. In 10 minutes, we found out his real name, his social security number, that he got it at the age of 8, so like child labor. That a fraudster by the name of, Rick has the full name, in Alabama is also using his social security number. His date of birth, and everywhere Rick has lived since he's an adult, including Florida, California, and Ohio. So then we pulled his credit report, which, by the way, we made him give us a release for. And we found his credit card purchases, we found his student loan, we found his car loan, we found his his mortgage, his installment accounts. We then did a Skip Trace America search, came up that he was a property owner. Then we did a nationwide real property search, which pulled up his property. Because we were lazy and we didn't want to spend money on a pay database, we just went right to the county website and pulled the property appraiser. We found out that his condo, big time book writer, is appraised at $89,000, which we didn't believe, so we went to Zwillow, which, by the way, has every property record and every house on satellite. And we found out that his house is actually worth $174,284. To the penny. We found out everywhere he lives with, how many bedrooms, whatever. And then, just because we like toys, we went to USGS and a bunch of other satellite programs to take a look at the property. Fortunately, Rick was looking up at the satellite at that moment. That's actually one of the photos we found online. We got photos on him and everything, but that just fit right. Then, Rick lives in Florida. There's zero public transportation, unless it's like driving Miss Daisy or whatever. His parking lot, his condo, if you remember, has a parking lot right there. That's his parking lot. So we checked for a car. We found he owns a Mazda Protege. It's paid off. We ran the condo address. By the way, for those of you who are investigators or law enforcement, big tip here. Don't just check name, social security number, date of birth. Always run the address through everything. You'll find aliases, you'll find businesses, you'll find all kinds of monkey business. We found one of his companies. Another tip, if you're investigating somebody, by the way, I don't know what the breakdown of this room is, so I'll just throw it out there. You start with an internet search. After you've used that and then done all the pay searches, go back and do another internet search with the new information you've gathered. You'll get more information, go back to the pay search, and then end with the internet search. You should do, for any real background investigation, 3 internet searches at different stages as you gather your information on the subject. The web search on Rick was amazing. We found websites, we found MySpace, we found postings, we found email. We were able, using directing Google to specific information, we were even able to go into rickdakin.com and find his hidden directories and suck that information out, which is legal. It's up there on the site and there's no password. Tough bananas. We were able to find his book. We were able to find, this is an entire list of photos of him, telephone number usage. We found 43 pages just of the index listings. We found Zoom info, which just, and by the way, this is a 5-second search. It tells you he worked at Cryptic Studios. He was involved with the RPG game. He has an interest in cryptozoology. He worked for I can't read my own screen here. NCSoft, thank you. And so on and so forth. Now, we purchase legally every single domain registration. And we get to do it because we have government contracts and we're not spammers. So we can put in your name and find out every website you have, put in your home address, put in your telephone number. I mean, some of the contact information has to be legit. You may put, Kiss My Butt as your name, but you're going to have a mailing address or a phone you can trace to you, or an email address or something. So we ran and we found Rick Dakin, we found Blue King Studios, we found Pornophiliac. Now, Pornophiliac has been down. By the way, Wayback Machine, great thing. You can go and look at everybody's website back to the beginning of time, find out stuff they took down, find out old websites, things like that. Pornophiliac has been down. Please, no jokes about getting it back up, but Pornophiliac has been down for a few years. We found on Amazon, we found his author bio. Now, frankly, I started out 22 years ago. When I started out, this is a $1,000 investigative report. I found it on Amazon for free. He lives, writes, and plays in Sarasota, born in '72, grew up in Florida, went to American University, BA in History, Ohio State, where he didn't get his MA, all the games he on, Geek Mafia, where he drinks coffee in the morning. I ever want to hunt you down. That he's a Democrat and involved in the local Democratic Party politics. And Amazon, by the way, gave me the list of all the books he was ever involved in. When I first met him, I had gotten through eBay one of his old out-of-print books. He says, "Can't believe you found that." Now Rick, very considerably, MySpace. And on MySpace, he has his friends, his whole educational history, his interests. I mean, even where he went to high school. Yeah, even where he went to high school, where he's working now. He's single, he's 6'1", he's a bodybuilder. By the way, girls, he's lost a lot of weight and he's available. He's an author. He went to American University. He went to the School for the Gifted. Woo. We'll find out later what that means. He's a publisher also. He's into martial arts. He's very liberal. He's into old school punk music. And I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but basically every iota of what makes up Rick Dakin without me leaving my house or my office. By the way, we went into his hidden directories and we found his resume. This is everything he's ever done in his adult business life. His latest book, which, by the way, I'm going to do question and answers. And the best questions, we've got some T-shirts and we've got a book we're going to give out to the best questions. We found out he's a Democrat. The thing that says Bush and Republicans are assholes was probably a clue. Actually, we did more investigation. We found out he's actually an anarchist. And, in fact, that he didn't pay the registration on his car, probably because he's an anarchist. We found out by finding out what podcasts he downloads and what he logs into. 3 of the, and these are pretty left-wing, sites. We found out that he every freaking day downloads Air America. That he's got, apparently he's got problems with Hungarian activists and hungry clowns. If you look at the thing, it says "Can't sleep, clown will eat me." That's one of his posts. And by the way, you need to know every damn thing you do on the net, every post, every email, everything. I will find it. I will get it. Some ass out there is caching it for me. I know. Tough. We found photos of him. Nice looking fellow, ladies. All right, maybe that's not the best photo. But he buffs his head. And we found, and were able to, within an hour, develop profiles on all, and I mean all of his closest friends. And this is not a joke. We were also able to find his mom and dad, where they live. His dad's a judge, which is probably why every time he got arrested, they didn't prosecute. No arrests, no convictions either, but no arrests. We found his cell phone and where it's registered. And by doing just minimal stuff, we found out when he lived in San Jose, he liked to eat at Hobies. This is an actual photo of the Hobies he used to eat. He worked at Cryptic Studios. He worked overtime all the time. We know that because of the hours he ordered in food and paid with his credit card. He likes Thai and Mexican, by the way. then we had one little moment of confusion. We found out that he now has space in a place called Digital 3. And so we looked into Digital 3. We found, now, by the way, stand up, Rick. Look at the picture of the guy there. It's not him. So we thought, oh man, okay, this is great. This is going to look great. I found his alias. I found a phony business he's running. Tell me that's not the same guy. Okay, well, it's not. The other guy's real. It's just freakish. It's really another guy. I mean, I spent an hour investigating the other guy to make sure it was a real other guy. But the guy, and they've lived in separate places, and it's not like some, sick, split personality. I'm Bob. No, I'm Rick. It's a real guy, but they're like separated at birth. All right, come on up here. I just want to do this with him up here, so you see I'm doing it with his permission. In addition to all of his friends and everything, by the way, he gets applause. He is a very brave guy. In 4.5 hours, we got all of that stuff. We got that his real name is Richard A. Dakin, his date of birth in '72. We got his social security number, starts with 266. Yep. We got his home phone number. We got his home address. The amount that he purchased it for, who he purchased it from, that Capital One was involved. The value was $200,000. The mortgage was Countrywide. His parents are Stephen and Karen. He's got a brother, Matthew. Matthew does have a criminal record. Well, it's a public record, dude. His office number, an old condo address that he used to use. He's got a Florida driver's license, expires in 2010. He drives a 2000 Mazda Protege. He went to Pineview School for the Gifted, a BA. We found out more. The degree in history, it was in Greco-Roman history. He went to Ohio State for a master's, didn't graduate, no criminal record. He's interested in cryptozoology. You worked at Barnes & Noble. He had repeated disputes with Bank of America. They did repeated inquiries on him. That's how we know. Credit inquiries, very mean. He worked at NC Staff. He works at Digital 3 with Birch and Kyle Cross. Yep. He has a company, Blue King Studios, involved with Pinnacle Entertainment Group, Cryptic Studios. He uses a Sony Vaio. We can tell from the hardware address when he logs in. He's into martial arts, weightlifting. He hangs out in coffee houses, including Latitude 23.5. You also like Ethiopian food, right? He's into multiplayer games. He helped develop Cult, which was banned in Europe. Sweden, banned in Sweden. Go out and get it while you can.
While you can was 1995.
Dark Kingdom of Jade.
That's my first book.
Oh, okay. Conspiracy X. He's got a bunch of credit cards. I'm not going to say what they are.
Yep.
Except I will say one of them is Pier 1.
And a couch I wanted.
Pier 1. What does that tell you? Definitely a taste issue. He has a Sprint cell phone, Verizon at home. He paid off his student loan, paid off his auto loan. You're a good American. Very, very left-wing, borderline anarchist. Consistently votes Democrat or worse. He's an officer in try to subvert from within. He's an officer in Sarasota Manatee Young Democrats Club. Ooh. I've got all of his email addresses here, which I won't say. Right? Yep. He's writing a book on hackers right now. Here's your address in San Jose. Yep. Yeah, that's enough. Anyway, that's my point. There are different points of view about data compilation. This is the one that I'm kind of the closest to, even though there are really, really good reasons to compile databases. If I'm going to, it used to be that everybody lived in the same small town, married the girl down the block, went to work with his dad, so on and so forth. A guy who married somebody from the other state, I mean, that was a big deal. People move 14 times in their life now in America. That's the average. There's a lot of bad people out there. A lot of bad people coming into America, as you've all seen over the years, the past 5, 6 years. There is a reason to be able to run a credit report on somebody. There is a reason to be able to investigate somebody before you do business with them. For example, credit cards, mortgages, pre-employment. If I'm going to hire you as a driver, I want to know you're not a drunk driver. If I'm going to hire you as a nanny, I want to know you're not a child molester. There are good reasons. Premarital and dating. Let me tell you something. I'm involved in setting up what is going to be the most intense internet dating screening company you've ever seen, as you can probably guess. If you meet Bob at Brooklyn.com and he says he's an unmarried 34-year-old, fitness who makes $200,000 a year, before you go and meet Bob, I think you have a right to know if he's like a bald married guy who likes underage girls and, is a janitor. Not that that's necessarily a bad job, but you should know. There's also a reason for targeted marketing. Companies have a right to use their money wisely. And economics of scale, if they can sell a product to 100,000 people, it's going to cost you and me less. And they don't want to be sending marketing to somebody who's absolutely disinterested in their product. Now let me tell you something. This is something that I do at every law enforcement seminar I run, every law enforcement conference I talk at. I don't care if somebody comes to you with a driver's license, social security card, and a history behind it. It's meaningless. You've got to investigate. In 30 states, still, go in and almost on request get a DL with the most flimsy documents imaginable. Now let me tell you, nothing that I talk about in these seminars is theory. It's all stuff I've done, I do, I know about. I've been an investigator for 24 years. Here's a California driver's license that I got for a job under David Markman, with law enforcement permission, by the way. They didn't give it to me, they just said we won't prosecute you. Here's when I was Salvatore Romano. Here's when I was David Halkin. Everybody said, oh, you're a private investigator, you know all these tricky guys, you could get guns, drugs. By the way, I can. But you won't see me at the party tonight. Everybody says, well, that's because you can do it. You're a private investigator. Somebody raise your, okay, first free t-shirt. Don't shout it out. Who can identify who this is? Yeah? Okay, tell me who that is. That's correct. That is the president's daughter's fake ID that she used, and her sister also had fake ID when they went out boozing. By the way, for a while their Secret Service code names were Bud and Bud Light. No. If you go to the International Herald Tribune on Wednesday, every Wednesday they have something called the Intermarket. You can legally buy passports. You want another passport? Not a problem. You want a European passport? Not a problem. By the way, that price has gone up enormously. This is like 3 years ago. They're now going for like 80 grand. And the government admits it. Big deal. Back to the issue of being able to know and having good reason to know who's who. There's a van company in New York. These are all recent Times articles or USA Today articles. A van being driven by a guy whose license had been suspended 18 times, rolled over, killed 10 senior citizens. You wouldn't have given him the job, and his employer wouldn't have given him the job if he had just done a simple driver's license check. You have a doctor. Let me tell you something. Doctors get away, literally, with murder. Cut off the wrong leg, no problem. You keep your hospital privileges. But it's all public record. You should have a right to check that out. Who knows who that is? No t-shirt for this, but you all ought to know who that is, right? That's the sleazebag child molester that supposedly killed, he didn't, they found out, killed John Benet Ramsey. You know what he was before he left the country? He was a substitute teacher in California. Nobody checked his arrest record. For law enforcement, this is a little chart that I made up. It's legit. Of the 18 9/11 hijackers, 14 would have been caught if the FBI was able to find its ass with both hands. You know, one thing I will say that's personal feeling, but it's true, they are the most pitiful law enforcement agency on the planet. And the one thing that can help them and help us, because they're all that stand, God help us, between us and Osama bin Laden and his like-minded loonies, one thing that can help the FBI do their job, unfortunately, is sucking every bit of privacy out of America. Let me give you an example. You see Al-Hazmi and Khalid, what's his face over there? Both of those guys were on CIA watch lists. They were known Al-Qaeda members. Now, by the way, they got into the U.S. anyway. That's a whole nother discussion. But of these two known terrorists, 12 more could have been connected to him. One terrorist shared an address with Al-Hazmi, with Khalid al-Midhar. One guy, Muhammad Atta, and another guy shared an address with him. 5 other terrorists shared a phone number on credit card applications with Atta, and another terrorist used al-Midhar's frequent flyer number. So the fact of the matter is, when the government says, well, we want to invade your privacy to protect you, it's not all bullshit, and that's a problem. However, unfortunately, Department of Justice follow-through stinks. Of the 1,100 cases that were referred for prosecution or further action to the DOJ by law enforcement, DOJ looked at them, and fully 817 of them they threw out on the spot. They said there's nothing here. So having the ability and using it intelligently is a problem. But nevertheless, the government is sucking up all your data. You apply for a student loan, the FBI knows about it. DNA, in most places they need a warrant to take your DNA. Let me tell you, however, once your DNA is taken, or Uncle Fred, who's in jail for robbing a liquor store's DNA, is taken, they are now using it to extrapolate out to family members. So if one guy out of 50 is arrested and his DNA is taken, and most states now have a law that if you're charged, some states have, if you're charged with any crime, even shoplifting, they do a DNA test. But most states now have, and I think it's a good thing, if you're convicted of a felony, they take your DNA. Well, not only do they take that person's DNA, but they have markers that reliably can lead them to other family members. So whether you know it or not, your DNA is in there. We have 20 minutes for 20 minutes and 2 prizes for who gets the book, who gets the remaining T-shirt. Are there any questions? Okay, well, you're far, so you get the T-shirt. Hell no, I'm not going to screw my job. Well, yes, of course I can. Of course I can. First of all, do not give your Social Security number out just because somebody asks for it. The vast majority of the places that ask you for your Social Security number have no right to it whatsoever. If they say, well, it's because I'm going to extend you credit, say no problem. I'll give you a $200 deposit. I'll give you a $500 deposit. Make up a phony mother's maiden name. If your mother's maiden name is Goldberg, you should be giving Wong to the credit card companies. Never, never, never give out a real mother's maiden name. Get a post office box or a mail drop. I mean, most of what you can do is known to you already. It's a pain in the butt to have to do. And be aware that there is a huge inverse proportion between privacy and benefit. You want those frequent flyer free tickets? You got to have it logged everywhere you go in your freaking flyer account. Okay, this goes to somebody who asks a good question. Shh. My personal response? I am an ethical investigator. If I am set up on a blind date with somebody, as I was for next week, I do not investigate her, because that's being a bully. I do the maximum of what needs to be done, but not a bite more. That's my personal response, and it's the response of my company. I own the largest privately held investigative support service in the country. I own People Finder. I do not give access to the general public. I don't put it out there on the net where anybody with a credit card who'll pay $49.99 can plug in a name and get a printout. Only law enforcement and licensed investigators get access to my service. 90%. Well, if you go to me and say, why do you need it? I mean, I've had people come to me who are stalkers who their ex-girlfriend got away from them and they're trying to track them down. You know, the first thing a decent investigator is going to do is investigate his client. No, that's a fact. I mean, the people that come to me, it's just unbelievable. I mean, we do it, and I have less of that problem than the average investigator because we do strange cases. We do a lot of sophisticated financial frauds, overseas stuff, but the average investigator has 10 people calling him a day. I'd like you to find so-and-so. Without my help, you could get 90% of that. If you had a legitimate reason by going to an investigator, you could get 97% of that. If they're a subscriber to my online service, 100% of it. No. An expensive background investigation, unless you're doing something like, you know, witness prep, incredibly in-depth, and go out in the field and knock on doors. I mean, a hugely expensive background investigation is $1,500. That's without feeling. Next question.
One of the things you did though when you were investigating that fellow over there with the credit check, now technically you had to have him sign off on that.
No. Because of the reason I was doing it, I had him sign off. I had him at that point. But if I have a legitimate business need, there's something called the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act, the FCRA, that lays out all the reasons that I can pull your credit. And I can pull your credit for any business transaction. If you call me up, if this guy calls me up and says, I want you to investigate somebody, I can run his credit. You betcha. Any legitimate business need. And of course, I'm going to decide what the legitimate business need is. Oh, God. I have no opinion because everything is being consolidated. If one company doesn't buy the other, if they buy different companies, sooner or later, you know, big fish eat little fish. ChoicePoint has snapped up 140 companies. And if they give me the right cash offer, you can add Diogenes to the list. Oh, a lot. Oh, well, first of all, I mean, we have, even though in my office I own an online service, I've got 3 T1 lines. I also have a $19 Verizon line that you know doesn't have a fixed IP number, and we turn it off and cycle it through the pool IP number after every search, and we search intelligently. We use Firefox that even if we're so stupid we forget to delete the cache, it does it every time you shut down the program. You get a book, by the way. That's a good question. Well, get it later. Sit down. Just remind me. One more book. Waving the Hand. None of your business. Really. None of your business to the first part of your question. Oh, I have 1 trillionth. I mean, the U.S. government is now buffering and caching everything that occurs. They are building farms and farms and farms of servers. And by the way, let me tell you something. So is Google. Google is now building. I mean, you're talking about Skynet. Literally, in a couple of years, they're going to have their own private internet infrastructure. They are building in an enormous building at the Port Authority in New York, and they're building an entire 30-acre server farm. I think it's in Oregon, I want to say. Oregon or Colorado? Oregon, okay. So, you know, and by the way, a lot of what they're doing for the government. Microsoft is also building a 25-acre server farm. You know, yes, Bill Gates is the Antichrist. There's a lot of other antichrists out there that are, you know, I guess that's the Hindu theory, all the evil gods. But, you know, I have essential investigative info in my office. I've got billions of records, but they're records that are basic records. I've got everybody's name, phone number, date of birth, social security number, driver license, motor vehicle, that sort of thing. All the other stuff we go out to other people for. Mainly because even though storage is getting incredibly cheap, you know, we buffer everything we do. Once we've investigated you, we keep that forever. And we've done cases where, you know, we'll search somebody and we've got a thing in our system that'll tell us if we've ever searched them before. Happens all the time. Once a week, the same weasel did something again, you know? But compared to the government, I'm not, you know, private industry is not private investigators aren't an iota of what's out there. I mean, what private industry like Sysint, Axiom, and whatever are doing for the government today, it's mind-boggling. I mean, they're adding billions of records a week. A week, really. Next question. Ma'am. Oh, it's not peer level. That's the problem. That's the problem. She said, as it becomes peer level, how do you think it's changed? Huh? More peer level. And it's not. It's going absolutely in the other direction. Let me tell you that as the government became ChoicePoint's biggest subscriber, the government told ChoicePoint, cut off private investigators. Let me tell you a story. I'm going to tell him the Santoro story. Earlier this year, the beginning of this year, I was hired to be the defense coordinator, defense investigation coordinator, for a guy by the name of Albert Santoro. This is in the newspapers. It's nothing secret. Albert Santoro is a prosecutor in New York who a phony baloney Prince of Austria, who is a high-level government informant, should be a rat, but he's not, inveigled him into a deal where he brought him a bag of money, $100,000, and said, do something with this for me. And Santoro thought about it for a couple of days and said, nothing I can do with it legally, gave it back to him, and a week later he was arrested for a conspiracy to launder money. Obviously, the main thing we wanted to do is find out who the prince was. The guy presented himself as Franz Joseph von Habsburg-Lothringen, a member of the Austrian royal family. And everybody started making jokes, yeah, well, I'm Napoleon and all of that. Well, here's what I found out. Found out his real name is Joseph Myers. He is a mental patient from Michigan. And I mean a real mental patient. He chased his mother around with a knife. He put a bowl of spaghetti on his grandmother's head, and the cops came and took him away in a straitjacket to a place called Happy Valley. And he's a real mental patient. And they eventually found out whereafter he changed his name. He decided, while he was in the mental institution, no surprise, that he was a member of the Austrian royal family. And he went to the probate court in Oakland County, Michigan, and he changed his name legally, Franz Joseph von Habsburg-Lothringen. And he went out and he started committing frauds and crimes and life sentence weight drug deals and things like that. 15 felonies we know about, and mysteriously never served a day in jail. We find out that he was a federal informant. And I'm, by the way, encapsulating for you a 6-month investigation. This was a tough one. We found out he was involved in Operation Wooden Nickel and Operation Uptick and Operation Rolling Stone and all of the code name federal investigations. As part of my investigation, well, during the investigation, I found out that this guy is really beloved by people he comes into contact with. I mean, I probably could have guessed that, but I found out for sure when his own mother gave me information on him and his wife and his children and everybody. Well, I found out who his in-laws were, not far from here in California, and I went to interview them. Nobody had ever identified this guy before. Nobody had ever found his family. And obviously people have been investigating for 20 years. This is not the first case or even the 100th case he's done for the feds. Who, by the way, I'm usually working with. I'm usually on the prosecution side. But the attorney that came to me is an old friend, and he said, this guy's absolutely innocent. And I said, okay, I'll work on the case. So I go and I interview his in-laws, and they tell me a lot of great stuff, which I can't talk about. But one of the main things they do tell me is they really thought he was the Prince of Austria. He even told them that. Well, after I leave the house, they call his daughter, his current wife. He's got 2 simultaneous wives. He's got Marianne in Detroit, and he's got Michelle in New York. And by the way, Michelle goes around to all these undercover meetings with him, and I should probably tell you, we had already subpoenaed Michelle. We tracked her down and served her to come to the trial. Well, the family calls up the wife. The wife, I guess, starts throwing frying pans at the prince. He calls up the FBI and he says, I'll wait unless you do something about this pain in the ass private investigator. Well, the FBI came with a grand jury subpoena, served it on me, and said, we want your whole file. I said, you can't do that. It's a defense file. Went to the attorney went in front of the judge and literally said, Your Honor, we'd love to brief this case for you, but in the history of the Southern District of New York, the government has never tried to subpoena attorney work product. So we can't give you precedent. It's never happened before. And the judge said, you're right. No subpoena. Well, the FBI waited until, and this is Judge Grisey, the senior federal judge in New York, they waited until Judge Grisey went on vacation. They impaneled another grand jury and they came back with the same subpoena, which I assure you has pissed off the judge. So this subpoena, another magistrate said, you can't do that. Well, a week after they said you can't do that, by coincidence, I was giving a talk to the Hope Convention, and 7 agents came in with jackets and drawing guns and took me out of their handcuffs. The motto of this story, which, by the way, they charged me with obstruction of justice and tampering with a witness until they found out it was our witness. And then they dropped the charges. I'm not making a word of this up. And there's a guy, is the Washington Post guy here? Where? I can't, honest to God, can't see. Okay. The Washington Post wrote a big story on it. It's all wrong. Look at the more informed comments at the bottom. Anyway, they dropped the charges, and now they're still threatening me. In defense of this guy, he pointed out to me, I couldn't get a hold of you for a comment. Well, I was in jail. Sorry. But no. Actually, the story, all kidding aside, the story was pretty accurate, and he couldn't get a hold of me. So the charges are dropped, and the motto of this whole story that I'm telling you, with 6 minutes left to the Q&A period, is the government wants to restrict what you can find out, and they're taking extraordinary steps to do that. So it's not a level playing field. There's nothing peered about it. The government has access to everything. The government has backdoors to Google, which are going to be detailed in something in a couple of weeks, including a filing. The government has backdoors to Yahoo. The government has intense relationships with ChoicePoint, with Sysint. U.S. Department of Justice has agency-wide flat-rate accounts to these companies. And not just to them, but to data compilers like InfoUSA, Axiom, all of that. I, on the other hand, as an investigator, am the victim. If I didn't own my own service, I would not be able to get somebody's complete Social Security number. ChoicePoint now only sells truncated information to private investigators. They cut off the last 4 digits of the Social Security number. They mask the day of birth. Now, let me tell you, to be a private investigator, and they don't mask that, by the way, to used car dealers. Literally, used car dealers who request your info preparatory to selling you a car. But for me to become a private investigator, I had to have 3 years of experience above the rank of patrolman. 3 years of investigative experience above the rank of patrolman, fingerprinted, photographed, state runs your prints, federal government runs your prints. You have to have 5 experience affidavits, 3 character affidavits, all notarized, which is amazing. And you have to pass the test on the law. People fail these tests all the time. Private investigators are the most screened persons in the planet. It's not like on TV, you get a secretary with long legs and a pebble glass door and you're a private investigator. You really have to have experience and a clean background. But the U.S. government pressured ChoicePoint, and ChoicePoint cut us off while the guy who sells you a Honda can get your complete Social Security number. Not only is it not peered, but it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and the government today is acting. In fact, there's something, so glad I just remembered this just now. The U.S. government is trying to reclassify records that have been classified for years, including, let me just read this to you. The administration's frenzy, this is, by the way, the International Herald Tribune, it's not like the Village Voice. The administration's frenzy has led to documents being reclassified after having been in the public domain for decades. For example, and this is a great example, the number of bombers and missiles the U.S. had in 1971. The same year that the FBI began its surveillance of Lennon, Nixon's Secretary of Defense testified before Congress and displayed a chart showing the U.S. had 30 strategic bomber squadrons, 54 Titan, and 1,000 Minuteman nuclear missiles. Now, I've probably just violated federal law by reading this to you, because the information has now been reclassified. I have no idea why. But this is a trend. And public records, property records are being closed, UCCs are being sealed, lawsuits, even in places like Florida where there's a Sunshine Act, I've had to come in with a subpoena to get a copy of a guy's arrest. So, whatever. We have 3 minutes, one more question. By the way, you get a book. That was an awesome question. With the t-shirt? Yeah. Okay. I can't see from this light.
No worries.
Just talk loud.
Question for you. Given the degree to which you're able to acquire all this information, is it rational to do things like we were saying, use a fake mother's maiden name, don't give your social security number? Frankly, it doesn't sound like why not behave in a completely public manner at all times? Because they're being monitored anyway.
Look, here's sorry, I don't have another book. That was a really good question. You do? The author. And by the way, he's the author. Get him autographed. And they're good books. They're good airplane books too, if you all are flying somewhere. If this was a normal world where this was a real democracy, the correct answer would be to leave information open for everybody. I have a right to find out certain things about you, and I have a need, and that's what America's about. Look, if you go to Europe, for example, and you want to protect yourself from physical harm, you can't own a gun. In fact, if someone breaks into your house in England, you pick up a knife, you're going to be charged. Here in America, we have a concept that people are allowed to stand up on their own 2 feet and do things for themselves. You're allowed, assuming you don't have a criminal record and you pass a training course, you get a firearm in most places except for the People's Republic of San Diego and whatever. But, in most states there is a right to carry. If you want to start a business, you start a business. You call up the U.S. government and you say, give me a tax ID number, and they give you one. You fax them in the IRS form, and they give you a tax ID number. In China, you've got to go down and explain your whole business plan before they let you open up a storefront. America is all about people looking out after their own interests and not having to rely on the government and not having the government's thumb on them. If things were done right, you would have access to most of the same info that I have. And for now, you do, but trust me, it's being closed. If you're an honest guy, why not do it all honestly? Because there's weasels out there. Because there's people who want to steal your identity, people who want to screw with.
The point I'm making is, if you can't actually stop all these people from
You can.
getting your information,
No. All these people?
I really behave in a way that you won't be able to monitor me, you personally?
No, me? Never. No. No, I mean, I own billions of records. I own billions of records in my office. But
That's a number, that's none of our business.
billions of records. Billions. I didn't say how many billions. Look, what you want to do is the point is, if there's something that you want to keep secret, you have to take proactive steps to keep it secret. You don't buy a grow light with your credit card. You don't, get on, and by the way, if you care if people know that you're gay, you don't put your name on a gay mailing list. If you are a, fanatically left-wing and you're shopping for a job in a right-wing market, if you are an anarchist, you're probably not going to get a security clearance from the Marine Corps. Just be intelligent about what information you let out there. And on general principles, by the way, don't give up info that you don't have to give up. Don't give away your social security number because somebody has a clipboard and says, social security number? Okay, absolute last question. Guy in the back.
More comment than a question. Are you aware that a lot of the data providers are now actually keeping track of all the queries, and then they can use those as meta information, so they can actually provide information about who's looking for what and what the trending is?
You mean individual websites, not just Google, right?
Also the data providers,
Well, of course they do. Sure. But no. They always did. There was always tracking of inquiries, always, and not only for the purpose that you're saying, but let's say someone is found to have been using a false account. You want to know all the people who have to be warned that some crook has their social security number. Thanks, folks.